Thank you for joining I Be There.
Good afternoon and welcome to I Be There, our regular streaming show in which we connect the digital advertising ecosystem. My name is Orchid Richardson and I am the SVP of Programmatic and Data Center. Today we have Nadav Perry from Tabula joining us. Nadav is an industry vet, having worked in tech for 20 years. He started his journey in startups in the startup capital of the world, Israel. He's worked in leadership positions for 10 years, including Google, and now runs global brand and agency development at Tabula. Nadav is father of three, an outdoors enthusiast. He enjoys helping startups define their strategy and is a guest speaker at universities and industry events. It's great to have you here, Nadav.
Thank you, Orchid. I'm excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. So let's get into it. Tabula is the world's largest recommendation engine in the open web, helping people discover things they may find interesting. According to your investor report, you serve 1 trillion recommendations every month, have more than 9,000 publisher partnerships working with you, and have approximately 13,000 advertisers globally using your platform. Wow, that is a lot. Has the past year been a good one for Tabula?
So firstly, I need to acknowledge that this has been a hard year for the world, Orchid. I mean, people have lost their jobs. People have lost loved ones. We had to deal with social isolation, working from home, schooling from home. And in a way, in many markets, it's still not over. If I look at my friends in Brazil and in India, they're still dealing with a pandemic that's surging. For Tabula, it's been a hell of a journey. So we started in March of 2020. We looked at the industry and we were worried, right? Travel industry wiped down. Some sectors in many markets, the automotive industry was stopped advertising. It was a moment of bewilderment. We sent 1,400 people to work from home across 20 countries. We were worried. We didn't know what was the year going to look like, what we should expect. But we were able to be extremely agile. And that happened because we always kind of looked at the market, looked at opportunities, and we were very transparent with our teams and with our clients. That ended up working out for us. We had a positive year. We had the best year of Tabula's history in terms of financial results, and that enabled us to propel and accelerate our ambition to go public. In fact, we just also released our Q1 financial results, and we had an amazing Q1 in 2021, and we exceeded our expectations.
Yeah, congratulations on the announcement to go public. I saw that happen, I think it was in February, so that's really, really exciting for your company.
It is, you know, it's an exciting milestone for Tabula, and it's also a validation that there's so much potential in the open web, and there's so much potential in our proposition of native advertising. And for us, going public means that we'll be able to invest in R&D, in technology. We'll be able to invest in our publisher partners, OEMs, device manufacturers. We want to power recommendations for every single person in the planet, regardless of the device and the screen. And it also means that we can offer that much more product and that much more reach to our advertising partners. So it is a validation and a really exciting time ahead, but we're not there yet. You know, knock on wood, we're still waiting for the final announcements from the SEC.
Right, fingers crossed. I'm sure it's going to happen.
Yeah.
One of the things that I really love about Tabula, and I think it's most interesting about your company, is this unique readership data that you guys have across all the open web. You know, given the pandemic, what were some of the biggest changes that you saw during the past 18 months?
No, it's so interesting. We're very lucky and honored to work with some of the biggest publishers in the world. I mean, in the US, these are publishers like Bloomberg, the NBC, USA Today, and across the world, you know, publishers like BBC, Hearst, Independent, Le Figaro, El Mundo, Build. So we have this unique access to what's happening on their site, which allows us to create trends and readership and understand readership at scale. Both on the macro level, so what are people interested in now, and also on the micro level, and we've seen some interesting things. So let me share a few insights, and there's a few slides that we can show here. When we went into the pandemic, we saw that people were reading more content in general in the morning, right? Versus pre-pandemic, which was kind of a slower burn and a surge in readership more during noon and afternoon. Another thing that was interesting to see was that during the pandemic, people read content, consumed news all week versus pre-COVID, which was more around, the weekends. So some really interesting changes in behavior from a consumer point of view. And then obviously in the beginning of the pandemic, people were panicked. People were reading and consuming content about, frankly, how to survive this. But in May, people started to look for more interesting things to do, right? So we saw a surge in interest around DIY, do it yourself, cooking and gardening and hair coloring. And we saw all this in real time. Now, fast forward to today, we're seeing normal behavior. We're seeing normal interest come back. Even around travel, we're happy to see that we're seeing interest and readership around travel go up by 77%. So that really allows us to provide insights, and those insights are used by publishers, obviously, to generate content, to understand what's going to be appealing to their readers. But interestingly, it's also trends and data that we can serve advertisers. The beauty category is an interesting one because beauty content is always consumed. Everybody wants to be beautiful. Everybody's watching the Kardashians and trying to improve themselves. But during the pandemic, the readership trending of readership has just completely changed. It wasn't always on. It was peaks. And Orchid, could you guess when those peaks happened? Do you know when those peaks of beauty content readership happened?
I'm going to say it was about 3 months in, because that's when I was ready to go buy some hair dye to cover my grays.
So yes, it was, but it was also specifically, it was very much more micro, very much more specific before events that allowed people to see other people. So it was before Memorial Day weekend. It was before the Independence Day, right? It was but 2-3 days before. And we were able to help beauty advertisers leverage those data. And, results spoke for themselves because we saw that beauty advertisers that advertised in the right time and in the right place saw an increase of about 7% CTR just based on these insights alone. So it's really interesting to, monitor the trends and then use them to make better decisions as a marketeer.
Yeah. And for the people out there listening to us, I don't know if you know, but Tabula actually hosted a brand academy with us recently, and they had a really interesting take on when the open web will look like in a post-cookie world and our optimistic view on the changes ahead. We invited them here to IAB today, really to focus on this topic and to advise publishers and brands on how to adopt to a more private advertising world. And I say that in quotes, because that's actually something that Tabula has coined. Can you tell us a little bit more about what you mean by advertising industry is moving forward into a private world?
Yeah, look, I mean, it's crazy how cookies have become the buzzword of the year, right? I think everybody's talking about cookies and cookie-less future, but I think our audience today need to understand that this is not a future; it's happening already. And it's not a surprise, and we weren't surprised by it. And I think many of our partners and the previous speakers that you had on this show were not surprised by this. Let me just kind of backtrack and share a bit of context with the audience. I mean, we've had discussions about this privacy-led internet or a more private browsing experience for years. We've had regulators in Europe with GDPR years ago. We've had the CCPA Act in the States. We've had tech-savvy users installing ad blockers. We've had browsers already deprecate the use of cookies in their own experiences in Safari, in Edge, in Firefox. So really what's happening today is Google. It's Google Chrome. Because it's so big, because it's about 63% of the internet consumption, it's rattling everybody. But this is by no means anything new. So I'm as a reader, as a consumer, as a marketeer, and as a tech provider, I'm pretty excited about having an internet that is better, more respectful to users, and that allows advertisers and publishers to really forces us to find new ways to create a meaningful engagement with users, respecting their privacy.
Yeah. I think I saw somewhere had Tabula has like literally maps out what they think the open web will look like in a post-cookie world for both publishers and marketers. Can you just talk us through that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, look, I mean, we're seeing divergence of solutions, right? And then I want to call out four, and maybe other people can, can split them in different ways. But really, the first thing that we're seeing happening is the paywall solution. So publishers are going to start charging for subscription, either on a monthly basis or for micropayments per article. But that's one thing that's happening. The second area of focus is really the login world. And we're already seeing consortium IDs being created. And we've talked in this show, you've talked about the Trade Desk UID and LiveRamp identity link. And it's a really interesting space that is going to allow publishers to unite across some other form of login. The third one is browser solutions. And we're watching this space very closely. We're seeing a lot of different solutions. Google is coming out with Flock. We heard and learned about Fledge, Lotame ID. So there's a lot of development around browser solutions. And one of the most interesting solutions that I believe is going to have a huge impact is what I call emerging technologies. And these are really future-proof technologies that will allow advertisers to reach consumers in innovative ways that help put the right ad in front of the right person in the right time, but without using privacy identifiers at all, PII at all. So really four areas.
Yeah, so that's interesting when you think about these emerging technologies and contexts. How is Tabula thinking about contextual targeting, how they're moving it forward?
Yeah, so look, I think brands need to grow by attracting new consumers, right? Not necessarily by talking again and again to the same consumers. So when I describe the previous four types of solutions, if you think about it, there's gonna be kind of a logged in open web and non-logged in open web. And in the non-logged in open web, which is definitely going to be the bigger one, contextual will be so much popular. Now, we need to differentiate between old contextual and new contextual. Old contextual is what the industry calls contextual targeting, right? So let's just put an example. I'm Gillette. My target audience is young males. I, as a marketeer, will assume that young males read sports and video games and whatever, and I'm going to put that on my brief. And whatever technology I'll use will use very simple ways to identify content about sports and video games, and that's going to be contextually targeted. So I'm hoping to find my audience through the context.
Right.
That's old school. What I think the industry is now starting to experience, and where Tabula really plays a strong benefit for advertisers, is contextual intelligence. Right? It's an evolution of contextual targeting because it understands what the audience actually is reading about now in real time. So going back to the example, if I'm Gillette and I'm trying to target, audience, I could, young male audience, I could, through these contextual technologies, through this contextual intelligence, understand what it is that those users are reading about now and capture those moments in real time, even if it's outside of the video games or sports content. And I think that's going to be a game changer. And at Tabula, we have the privilege of having all that access to the first party publisher data, so we can make those connections for advertisers really quick. But I think the emergence of contextual technology is definitely a space to look into and look after.
Yeah. So the question I get all the time about contextual, is it really effective? What's your point of view?
Right. That's the $1 million question, isn't it? Advertisers need effectiveness. And at the end of the day, it's, the media either performs on it or it doesn't. We did a few tests, actually. So interestingly, we've been watching the RPM. So that's revenue per 1,000 page views or impressions on the publisher side. And we've looked at the RPM on Safari. And remember, Safari doesn't have cookies for a while now, versus Chrome on mobile devices. And despite the fact, and you can see this on the slide behind me, despite the fact that Safari blocked third-party cookies back in 2017, you can see how the performance on the RPMs of Safari is actually outgrown Chrome. So it's really interesting that even without cookies, publishers are able to yield more revenue. And that's a direct testament of advertising seeing value in those placements. Okay, so that's one proof point that we have to provide confidence with advertisers that it's effective. The second one is, studies that we ran with advertisers. So I can quote a study that we ran with an financial investment service. And this was a study that was run by Millward Brown. And we saw an increase of, the Tabula contextual targeting had generated a significant increase of 30% in consideration intent. So there are many ways to validate effectiveness, and I think the onus is on us as an industry to prove that it works, but we have enough proof points to suggest that it does.
Wow, interesting. One of the things that I think is super interesting in terms of how we are moving things forward is, there's no single solution to how we're going to replace third-party cookies. So this is a great opportunity to focus on that.
It is, but let me ask you a question, Orchid, because back in March I read an article that you wrote, and I'll quote: "Publisher revenue is in jeopardy. It's a $10 billion that publishers are going to lose because we're not going to be able to do audience targeting." So we're 3 months later. How do you feel the same? What's your confidence level now?
Well, so, I have a very strong opinion about this. Like I was saying, I really don't believe that there's going to be one single solution to replace third-party cookies. It's really about the marketer understanding their first-party data, understanding the partners that they have, understanding the categories and the media mixes and the solutions that they put together. It's really important to keep in mind that when a marketer is thinking about their customer, that the customer that they're talking to in the winter is different than the customer they may be talking to in summer, and different than the customer they, thinking about on Cyber Monday. So it really comes down to understanding your portfolio, understanding the partners, and understanding that it's going to take a lot of different things to create a real comprehensive solution. But enough about my POV. I'd love for you to just tell us, the IAB audience, what are the key takeaways? What are the things that we should be thinking about as we move forward from today? Yeah.
I mean, look, the first thing is that the cookieless future is here. It's not something to wait for. It's something that has hit us already. And it's been here for a number of years, as I said, and it's been evolving. And so don't delay decisions about it, because the industry is ready for you to play this game and test and iterate. And that brings me to the second takeaway, which is reevaluate your marketing. How are you using data needs to be reinvented in most companies. What are you doing with your first party data? What are you doing with contextual data? How are you using programmatic? What type of partners do you have? What type of partners have you not tried yet? And I think this is the time to test. The third point is, to our earlier discussion about contextual, this is the time to gain a better understanding as a company about contextual intelligence. No longer rely on just contextual targeting that is based on reading a header and understanding and assuming that you know what readers are interested about. Go one level deeper. Lean on partners that have deep AI and are able to advise you on contextual intelligence to truly make sure that you're hitting the right person with the right ad in the right time. And then I guess the fourth one is test. Nobody has a good enough grasp of how this future is going to be shaped, and it's changing rapidly. And we just talked about FLOC and FLEDGE and all these acronyms that are jumping around in the industry. We need to test them. And so you make sure that you have an organization that is ready to test, that is data oriented to make decisions that will ultimately help you through this turbulent waters.
Awesome. I think that's a great place to end. Test now and test often. So thank you so much for joining me today. This has been a great conversation. Thank you everyone for joining us today. To learn more about the conversations we're having, please visit IAB.com, where IAB members can join committees, start working on stuff, focus on contextual targeting, and really understand how to apply some of this to your businesses. I'd also like to acknowledge our production team. IAB There is a production of the Interactive Advertising Bureau. Our show today was produced by Connor Healy, James Linney, Joe Pilla, and Loretta Bain. I'm Orchid Richardson, and thank you for watching.